everyone. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great. CC, I got a little bit of bad news that you're not privy to yet. Jenna Wolf is in a tough spot right now. Jenna Wolf won a bet last night. With me. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know what's a bad thing and what's a bad sign? And Chris Carter, you'll know what I'm talking about here. When you lose a bet, you feel terribly. This morning, winning the bet, your emotion was, oh, I should have bet more.
I'm turning into...
Oh, she's hooked now.
What are they called? Betters?
When the winning bets don't feel good because you didn't bet enough, that's the beginning of reeling you on in.
I was a normal, healthy person before I met your partner over here. My partner over here.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Right?
Added to the graveyard.
He has just infected all of us with this. All I'm going to tell you is this.
Yeah, Nick Wright, too much of Nick Wright can decline the quality of your life. Yes.
That's not true. You know what the truth is, Nick? My life is better because you're in it.
Oh, thank you very much,
Better.
Jenna Wolf.
Even
Congrats
more better
on that
because
win.
you're in it. Thank you very much. It feels
your
good.
Celtics played tonight, by the way, 1-point home underdog, just letting you know.
I know.
We'll talk more about that later.
All right, we just got to move it on in my ear, even though all I want to do is talk about how I need to make my money back. Let's start off our NBA coverage explaining the concept of friendship since we just started it. You know, if Nick's out sick, CC steps up. If CC's sick, Nick steps up. If I'm sick, we're all screwed.
Correct.
Rockets, Jazz, Game 5. James Harden, a little bit sick, not feeling great, so who steps up? His on-court BFF, Chris Paul. Stepping up big. Wow, what a night for Chris Paul. 41 points, 20 of those points in the fourth quarter. He also had 10 assists, 0 turnovers, best game of the postseason career for him. Monkey off back, I would say. Rockets are in the conference finals. Here is James Harden on Chris Paul's performance.
Unbelievable. I mean, you know, he went out there and took over the game, you know, and especially for an opportunity like, you know, he's never had before. He went to go get it. You know, he put us all on his back and said, listen, you know, I got us. That's big time right there. It's a big time performance. He got in his bag and, you know, he called everybody off. He said, you get out the way, I'm gonna put us on his back. He had that look in his eyes.
Here you go.
I mean, if he has a, I don't care what you say, but, you know, and if he has that look in his eyes, you know, every single night, he's a problem.
This is one of those stories that you're happy after the game. Yes, you can talk about the win, but it's nice that there was a story being weaved throughout this, and it was Chris Paul. CC, does Chris Paul's really just an amazing game change, his Game 5 change your perception of the arc of his career?
It's not going to change my perception, but I think it's a good question because there are people out there that would like to say that Chris Paul, he's been the type of player that should have gotten to a finals by now. It's not going to change my opinion. I've always thought he's a phenomenal player. He's been in some special situations that I wouldn't think. I didn't determine after those situations Chris Paul's not a clutch player. But when you don't get to a conference final, that's what they're going to do in the NBA. If you're a dominant player, because you're on the court so much in the playoffs, they give you more credit and more responsibility for the wins and the losses. And Chris Paul typically being the best player on all the teams he's been on. But what he did last night was phenomenal. Because with the spotlight being on Houston as far as the coach, there's question marks. Can he get it done? This team, even with 65 wins, can they get it done? Chris Paul, is he really a clutch player? You know, James Harden, is he clutch? So for me, it was phenomenal to see, and it was phenomenal to see the league MVP take the back seat. Didn't mind. And that was something I didn't think Harden had in his game until Chris Paul was added to the Houston Rockets. So it was phenomenal to see someone like Chris Paul, because knowing Chris Paul, knowing his family and everything, he's a great guy, all right? Now, he's got a reputation with some of the coaches and teammates that he might rub them a little bit the wrong way, but off the court, he's got a great reputation. It's nice to see him get some playoff success.
He is a great guy and a great player. I believe when it is all said and done for Chris Paul, there will be 2 point guards, Magic and Oscar, clearly better than him, and then you will be able to make an argument for him versus everybody else. Stockton, Isaiah, Kidd, Steph, Nash, whomever, Iverson, whomever you love. I think Chris Paul has been on that type of trajectory since basically year 2 in New Orleans, since his amazing early success when he almost won a league MVP when his second best player was David West. But you couldn't disregard the fact that no player in the history of the NBA had played more playoff games without making a conference finals. That was there. That was a real thing. No matter what the advanced metrics say about him, no matter what all his teammates say about him, no matter what the eye test says about him, to be that great and to never make the Final Four was going to be a problem for him.
So it's like he was the best player in golf. He's the best player not to win a major.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's the way we could look at it.
Absolutely, because right now I don't know if people would say Chris is the best player to never win a championship, but he certainly was, in my eyes, the greatest player in league history to never make a conference finals. And so, Jenna, the fact that he made it, but made it the way he did, with the greatest offensive quarter of his career. Never had he scored 20 in a quarter before last night. The first 40-point, 10-assist, 0-turnover game in NBA playoff history, right? It had never happened before. So for him to make it and make it that way, I felt great about it because I do love this player, and I think he's deserved some postseason success.
So we know the 41 points, and it stands out, and the 20 points in the quarter, and that stands out, and that's great. How underrated is Chris Paul defensively?
Oh, he's an amazing defensive player. I think that when people talk about Chris Paul, that's one of the calling cards that we don't talk about it because he's in the West and now he's with Houston. But when you talk about Chris Paul and the people that know basketball, when they talk about Chris Paul, they pull out the point you, Jenna. One of the top defenders in the league and had been for over 10 years. People don't talk about that, though. They like to talk about his lack of success. They talk about him and Doc Rivers not being able to get it done with the Clippers. But Chris Paul as a defender. Now, as we move on to the conference finals, we getting ready to see. Because him and Harden versus Clay and Steph. And not only Houston's ability to be able to close games a different way, which they did last night with Chris Paul, their ability to be able to defend the backcourt of Golden State is better than ever.
And on the defensive point, which is a great point to bring up, because if you're not a rim defender, we don't have a lot of great metrics, counting stats or advanced stats to quantify how good you are defensively. There's the steals category, but some people would say a lot of the guys with the average of most steals are some of the worst defenders because it means they're gambling, they're out of position. Chris Paul, when we talk about the Rockets making the huge jump defensively between last year and this year, it is not just P.J. Tucker and your guy, Luke Richard-Mbah-a-Moute. It's the best defensive point guard of a generation. That's who Chris Paul has been. First-team All-NBA defense year in, year out. And you don't always get what you deserve in sports, but Chris Paul a few years ago hit a buzzer beater in Game 7 to beat the Spurs. And I thought, okay, well, that will remove all of the choker stuff from him. But it didn't. They blow a 3-1 lead.
Yep.
He had the tough series against OKC at the end. And so now this does remove it. Now we can say there's a lot of really good players who haven't been to the finals in this league. There weren't players at this level that hadn't been to the conference finals.
Right. And even if they aren't able to get through Golden State, I don't think the same commentary that followed Chris Paul after hitting the game winner, I don't think it will follow him after facing one of the best teams that we've seen in the conference final in Golden State, with them being in their 4th straight conference final.
100%.
You also have to look at this as a win for Houston to be able to do what they did without James Harden really stepping up, without
that's why
having
you get him.
Yeah.
That's why you go get Chris Paul, because you are, even if you're a guy, every superstar in the league except LeBron has a history of about once a series they're going to lay a dud. You know what I mean? Whether it's Steph, whether it's KD, no matter whomever you are. And Harden has a more tattered history than that. A couple times a series he might have a bad game. That's even if he's fully healthy. Chris Paul revealed yesterday that he was a little under the weather. But that's why you go get him, Chris.
Yes.
So you can win this game, because I don't want people to underrate this. This is a game the Rockets were trailing going into the 4th quarter.
Yes.
If they lose that game, and they have to go to Utah for Game 6, we're talking a totally different situation right now. We're bringing up the 3-1. We're talking about a pick'em Game 6, and then all of a sudden, what really is the situation for the Rockets?
Yeah, Chris Paul, he'll look back on this season with a lot of accomplishments. But the most important thing for me personally is what he did. He came over. We went to watch him play against Brooklyn.
Yes.
And I hollered at him on the court, "Hey, Chris Paul, I need a picture after the game." He stopped what he was doing and was like, "I need a picture too." And
awesome.
Nick's wife, Danielle, had the jersey on. So him coming over this season is one of many accomplishments.
It was great. And he is, I'm glad you mentioned it. He's my wife's all-time favorite player. He took time with her, thanks to Chris Carter. But no, the things you hear about Chris Paul off the court are 100% accurate.
That's great.
Like one of the NBA's really good guys.
All right, the Rockets can sit back now. They're on to the Western Conference Finals. Coming up, are the Warriors still on cruise control through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs? We'll set that table next on First Things First. We'll get to the Warriors in just a second, but first are those 2 words. Jazz Rockets Game 5, Donovan Mitchell. Tough basket gets it to fall and one.
I've never in my life watching professional basketball seen a rookie that can go from having a mediocre or even bad game to just incandescent in a quarter. Did you have 2 22-point quarters in one playoff run?
Now, I was getting ready to say something. I had a tremendous comment, but you threw a word on me. Incandescent?
So hot, on fire.
Like the light bulbs.
Yeah, like glowing brightly. All right, I won't use it.
What
next
about
time.
he's damn good?
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
Tomato.
No. Same game, Alec Burks drives, baseline, throws
Should have stayed
down.
in college that
Big
last
one.
year. I think they were on Teach Those Words that last year.
I don't know about it, Ohio State. He was good for them yesterday.
Be offended by that.
Oh, no, it's all good. He knows. And Binghamton neither. Come on.
I'm offended by that. Now you lost your chance to speak. Same game, Gerald Green with the steal.
Boom.
Vicious fast break dunk. Rockets are moving on to the Western Conference Finals, boys.
This was the thing. I'm not surprised that Houston, the team, like they love Gerald Green, but I was really shocked, Nick, at the conversation we had with Houston's owner, how much he personally loves Gerald Green and realizing the value he brings to that team.
Same game, CP3 said hello. The owner could not stop talking about Gerald Green.
Yeah, I had to get a lot of information. Didn't know when I was going to run into him again.
The other Game 5 last night, Pelicans at Warriors, and Drew Holiday with the spin and impossible dime in traffic. Look at that.
Man.
His reputation changed after these 2 playoff series you saw with Drew Holiday?
Yeah, listen, he's a guy that had been somewhat disappointing due to injury. And now when you see him healthy, you see one of the better 2-way guards in the league and a guy who you think, could he be the 3rd best guy? Not the 2nd best guy, 3rd best guy on a champion? Maybe.
All right, let's take a deeper dive into this game. Warriors and Pelicans, Game 5, deeper dive. High five. Golden State's 4 stars combined for 94 of their 113 points. 94! As the Warriors cruise to a win and a gentleman's sweep, Steph Curry leading the way with 28 points. It is just his 4th game back from his knee injury. Here's his teammate on getting Steph returning to form.
I think Coach did a great job, though, just, giving him a little bit here and there. And then tonight, really just letting him go. And you see, when you let the dog off the leash, what happens.
I feel good. I feel confident what I'm able to do out there. Timing can still get a little bit better with the ball and things like that when you start to get so excited. Still, like, when I'm out there and missing 6 weeks, it's still appreciative of just being out there playing. So, yeah, like I said, I continue to get better, continue to get my timing right, continue to get back to the normal rotations, normal, minutes that I'm out there playing, and hopefully won't look back.
It's nice to see what Steph Curry can do when he's just in the process of trying to get himself back into it. That's not bad, even if he stopped right there. Do you think, CC, that we've seen the Warriors at their absolute best yet?
No, I don't think. Back to what Kevin Durant said. A question to you guys. If Steph Curry was a dog, what kind of dog would he be?
Oh,
because he said he let the dog off
Labradoodle.
What kind of dog? He'd be a nice dog, right?
Some kind of a poodle.
I thought you really wanted an actual dog name. I apologize. Go ahead, as you were.
No problem. I just thought that was
okay. Yeah.
Me and being a dog lover.
Oh yeah, you being a dog lover, absolutely.
Let the dog off the leash. Steph Curry, what he brings to Golden State, you can't speak about it just one thing, because what he does for Draymond, what he does for Clay, the lack of pressure on Kevin Durant, where he's able to thrive. But the question is, have we seen their best? No, absolutely. It's impossible to see their best, for one, because Steph wasn't there for part of the series, and they haven't been challenged. This last series, Utah was out two-thirds of
New Orleans.
New Orleans, and without two-thirds of. Oh, excuse me.
You're
okay.
fine.
Golden State, they haven't been challenged because of the lack of professional. The Spurs. The Spurs don't have their team.
Right. Well, both the guys. The point. I know exactly where you're going. I got you. Both these guys are teams were without one of their two best players.
Yes.
Kawhi Leonard's out in round one.
Couldn't get the numbers together.
I got you.
Absolutely.
Two out of three. I got you.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Cousins out in round two. And these were series where the Warriors were overwhelming favorites going into each of them. And so what we saw them, in my opinion, at their best in moments. The couple times these games are close at halftime, except for game three, what did we see? The Warriors come out in the third quarter
blitz
and beat the brakes off you. They started the third quarter last night 25-4. Like they have now played 92 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
They have given full effort for 48 minutes, 0 times.
But because they have the ability to literally turn it on when they want to turn it on, when they feel like they need
really
to.
do. So I just don't believe you can be at your best until you're challenged. That's either by a coach, either by the talent that they have. And we know the Spurs, shorthanded. We know the Pelicans, the lack of depth, the lack of shooters that they have, lack of bodies that they can throw at Kevin Durant. So, no, I'm not disappointed in what they've done. I think they've done well getting Steph back in. I like the fact that he did more, and we saw his best in last night's game. But Harden and Chris Paul and what they provide for Houston will bring out the best in Golden State. I believe we will see their best basketball.
One guy has been at his best this postseason, Draymond. Draymond has been, when Steph was gone, Draymond, not Kevin Durant, Draymond said, I am going to claim the mantle of emotional leader of this team, defensive leader of this team, heartbeat of this team. You saw Draymond Green, whether it was texting Kevin Durant at 4 a.m. before Game 4, saying, we need a huge game from you, and KD responding with 38 points. Whether it was Draymond Green taking on the challenge of, yeah, you want to start the Hamptons 5? I'll guard one of the 6 best players in the world, Anthony Davis, and do my best. Whether it was Draymond Green being peacemaker, when KD last night got upset because he thought someone stepped under his feet, and Draymond grabbing KD before he could do something foolish. Draymond this postseason now is giving you 13, 12, and 9. He's almost averaging a triple-double for the postseason. He just did average a triple-double for the series, the first Warrior to ever do it. Draymond's been extraordinary. The rest of the Warriors have been good when they've needed to be.
Extraordinary, yes, but also the one word that this Warriors team, I think, needs to focus on, consistent. He's actually, of the 4, he's been the most consistent throughout the postseason. Not too high, not too low, on both sides of the ball. And I think if we're going to look at one player of the 4 to be the guy that was going to hold everybody together, it certainly wasn't going to be Draymond Green.
No, but that's what makes him really special, Jenna. And you're right about that. When you talk about consistency based on Draymond's emotion and everything, you're not going to look at KD, Steph, and Clay and be like, wow, the most consistent guy is going to be Draymond.
But let's talk about the Pelicans just for a second, because we saw what happened in Game 5. And the narrative with regards to Boogie Cousins has changed a lot over the course of the season. First it was, oh, they'll never win without Boogie. Then it was, hey, they don't need Boogie. Anthony Davis is doing enough on his own to carry this team. Then you saw what happened in this game. I wonder if that has changed at all, and now we're thinking maybe this team does need Boogie Cousins.
I think it has changed when you look at the firepower that they have in the Western Conference, and I believe a lot of it will be based on their superstar. And you saw him demand Boogie Cousins. After the game, people talked to Anthony, what do you think about Boogie Cousins? Man, we need Boogie Cousins. So to me, sign Boogie Cousins to a short-term deal. Sign him to a 2-year deal. The reason why, your superstar wants him there, but then the pressure goes on to the coach, Alvin Gentry. I need you to continue playing at the pace that you played at after Boogie. Now, see if we can get the same type of results from the Twin Towers, but Gentry's got the responsibility. They have to keep playing at that pace, because that pace which made them formidable in the Western Conference.
And you, at the very least, have to be able to toggle the pace up and down. If you can't play at quite that pace when Boogie's on the court, you have to have your team conditioned so when Boogie is off the court for 12 or 14 minutes a game, you can go right back to the pace. That's tough. That's a tough coaching job, but I think Gentry is up for it. I do not think you can let one of the 12 best players in the league walk away and get nothing in return. I just don't. I think you have to re-sign Boogie. Now, If it doesn't work, if you don't look as good, then he becomes a trade chip unless he doesn't recover from his injury whatsoever. You have to bring him back to see if it can work, and if not, so you can get something in return. I feel like they've got to re-sign him.
All right, the table is set for the Western Conference Finals. It is the Warriors, it is the Rockets, it is as predicted. Coming up, though, we'll talk some football. Will the Giants' offense be as good on the field as they are on paper? That's next on First Things First. On to football. In my head, we are. Let's chat about number 3 overall pick, Sam Darnold. Jets CEO Christopher Johnson had high praise for the rookie quarterback. He said he, quote, honestly thinks they're going to look back 20 years from now and say this is the moment the Jets shifted into a new gear. Cece, what are reasonable expectations for Sam Darnold in his rookie year?
Well, we want him to be the starter. And it becomes very important that starter feels the support of the organization, not only from the beginning, but he's going to go through tough stretches. He's going to have bad games. He might have a bad month. But knowing that the organization thinks you're a special player, and now I need to get some help. Like, this is a team game. I need some help. I need Sam Darnold not getting hit. I need Sam Darnold developed a lot like Mark Sanchez early. I need the defense try to be dominant. I need an offense that is predicated around the running game. I need a couple weapons that he can be able to throw to. That's how you're able to set up a quarterback. Don't just keep having press conferences, oh, I love this guy, oh, I think this guy is going to be special. No guy is special when he gets hit. And quarterbacks we've seen, if you want to talk about stunning the growth of a young quarterback, you let him get sacked 60 times
David Carr.
his rookie year. Like, that is not what they are built for. They're not used to it. And if the Jets, if they want to support him, that's what they need to do for Sam Darnold.
And it'd be help if their number 1 receiving option gets his warrant situation cleaned up as well. Here's the deal. I think year 1, what's fair expectations? Start at least half the games and stay healthy. That's because we are learning you cannot correlate how good a guy is in year 1 or how bad a guy is in year 1 with how he's going to be. You can correlate if he's not good enough to get on the field. I remember when the Jets spent a second-round pick on Christian Hackenberg. People love the pro potential of him coming out of Penn State. He's never gotten on the field. But I watched Jared Goff have one of, statistically speaking, the worst rookie years ever.
Yes.
And then what did the Rams do in year 2? They spent some money on a left tackle. They spent some money on some weapons. They trade for Sammy Watkins. They do a lot of things, and all of a sudden
got some fresh thoughts in his head with Sean McVay taking over as the head coach.
Absolutely. They do all these things, and he ascends like that. I've also seen a quarterback, not to pick on Dak, but in Dak in year 1 looked like a super-duper star. In year 2, regressed significantly. So what do I need to see from Sam Darnold? That he's good enough at some point to beat out Josh McCown. Like that level, and what do I need from his teammates? The health thing is, you talk about the violence of pro football more than anyone I've ever met, probably because you're the person I'm closest to that dealt with the violence of pro football.
Yeah, I'm still flinching.
Right. The difference between what he was subjected to at USC or in high school and what he's about to be subjected to, the Jets need to give him every chance to ease into that. And I know there's no easing into the NFL, but that's the biggest key to his success, more so than his weapons offense.
Jenna, you pointed out one of the keys when we had Sam Darnold in here, because we had the pleasure of being able to meet his family. His dad, behind the scenes, a very, very good football dad. He got emotional. We gave him the Hall of Fame tie. You know, he was crying and everything. But his mom, and his mom coming out here and you being in New York, realizing he comes from a very, very stable home life. That's going to help him in New York City. I don't believe it's going to be too big. He was the next heir apparent star on USC's campus. And if you can be a star on that campus, I believe the transition to New York and the Jets and him having that stable family around him will help him out.
2 things, strong mom and an offensive line. Nothing can go wrong, right? The other team in New York, the Giants, fact, they weren't very good last year.
Isn't your dad like the general manager, head coach, and everything? He runs everything,
all
right?
Of it,
okay.
Cece, all of it. Let's just summarize that one sentence I just gave you 8 seconds ago. The Giants had only 3 wins, 4 games played by OBJ, and countless jokes about Ben McAdoo. But with a new coach, a healthy Beckham, and the number 2 overall pick in Saquon Barkley, Eli Manning says the Giants' offense looks good on paper. CeCe, do the Giants have enough on offense to have a bounce-back season?
They really do. They really do. And it starts with their quarterback being able to get his confidence back. Because it's not, as long as Eli's been playing, it's not easy to get through what he went through last year. Let's not forget, it's only bad football, all those losses, but his starting streak he got benched. I mean, the backup looked awful. The head coach lost his job. The general manager lost his job. Now we got all new people for Eli. Like, man, this is a make or break year for Eli Manning, a guy who's won 2 Super Bowls. So, yes, it starts on paper. Does Eli have confidence in what they're doing? They spent their resources to give him some protection. So I believe this is a very important offseason for the New York Football Giants. And, yes, I do believe they can get back 9 wins, 10 wins, and get themselves back into the playoff picture.
I feel like if any player should be happiest, it's not Odell coming back. It's not the general manager looking at this team. It's got to be Eli Manning. He's got someone to throw to. He's got someone to hand the ball to. He's got Nate Soldier to protect him.
And what else happened on draft day, Nick, or didn't happen to help Eli?
Quarterback.
Yes.
There is no team, I want to be very clear about this. There is no team in the league that did more this offseason to help their quarterback than the Giants did for Eli Manning.
Yeah.
They signed the best left tackle on the market. They used the number 2 overall pick not to draft a quarterback.
Excuse me. Also, left tackle, they paid above market value.
Right.
For Nate.
They overpaid. They said, we have to get him a left tackle. So they signed the best left tackle and pay a premium for it. Number 2 overall pick. They got a lot of options. Draft a quarterback. Draft a defensive lineman, like the way they've won Super Bowls before. Trade back. Get future picks and less super blue chip prospects. The 12th pick and the 21st pick, whatever it is. No. We're going to give you the best running back, the best highest rated running back to come out of college in arguably a decade. I think he's rated higher than Zeke was. Doesn't mean he'll be that player, but as far as what they see him as a pro. And while they didn't give him this, oh, yeah, by the way, one of the 3 best receivers in the league. He's coming back as well. No one had more. Oh, and by the way, we're going to hire an offensive-minded head coach, a guy that built things in Minnesota offensively.
Who believes in you.
Who believes in you. They have done everything you can ask to do for a quarterback. So the question is now Eli. And I go back to the same list I had yesterday when we talk about the quarterbacks in the NFC. Hey, man, oh, man, oh, man. There are 7 quarterbacks that are outstanding. Rodgers, Breeze, Wilson, Wentz, Ryan, Cam, Kirk. There's another half dozen. I didn't even mention Matt Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jameis Winston, Jared Goff. Like, where does Eli fall in the pecking order? Because the Giants have enough skill position guys, and I would argue high-level talent on defense if they play to their talent.
Yes.
That with average quarterback play, which is what they had 2 years ago when they went to the playoffs, they're fine. But it's very hard to survive in this league with well below average quarterback play. So that's the question for Eli. Who is he with now the pieces in place, theoretically a healthy team, and an improvement at head coach?
And he definitely has the best running back situation that he's had since he's been a Giant, as far as a guy that can do all things for 3 downs. And I believe that has to be able to help Eli's confidence. When you look at the quarterbacks in the NFC, it becomes important, man. They need to get Eli off to a good start. Like, people don't study the NFC. You need to start looking at those quarterbacks. So you start looking at matchups. Who can win divisions? Who can advance to the conference championship? Who can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl? Man, that quarterback can't be a detriment to the team. And that's what we have seen with Eli Manning.
Isn't it funny how far we came from where we were midway through last season? Eli's terrible. Eli's getting benched. Maybe he's lost it. He's got nothing left. The team benched him. I mean, I didn't get the blessing from the owner, but the general manager and the coaches. And now we're starting this season with, we're going to anoint Eli, give him all the tools he could put him at, and now go out and play football, Eli.
Eli earned that level of deference with the 2 championships. And now we are going to see if he can pay it forward to a degree.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things the Giants could have done that would have been not unfair to Eli, but would have been, for lack of a better term, like mean to Eli. Like, oh, listen, we're going to hire a defensive-minded head coach, or we're going to draft your replacement, or even draft Bradley Chubb. Or they did everything in their power to help him. We'll see if he is.
They could have traded Odell Beckham.
There's another one. I didn't even think about that. They could have used the 34th overall pick, 2nd pick of the 2nd round. They used it on a guard. So you get one of the best guards available, you get the best veteran left tackle available.
They could have said, Eric Flowers is just fine. Don't even worry about it. Okay, that would never have happened.
But they could have. I mean, there's a lot of things they could have done. Eli couldn't have scripted an offseason better for him, and then we'll see if he can take advantage of it.
And I hope the Giants, I hope they reach out to Eric Flowers. I'm glad you mentioned his name, because with Nate Solder playing left tackle, you get one of the best guards in the draft, Hernandez, I think from Texas.
Will Hernandez.
Will Hernandez. And you get him. If we can move him back to right tackle, and don't put the pressure on him.
Yeah.
He's in the 5th year of that first contract. I believe you're better off with him on the roster. I know he's not participating in the offseason workouts, but if the Giants at their best means their draft pick has the mindset, I'm going to come in and play this last year with Nate kind of mentoring him and taking over the responsibility at left tackle.
Here's a question for you guys. So now that the offense is set for the most part where it is, where does Pat Shurmur fit into all this now? How he works with these weapons, how he uses them, and how much is Eli looking forward to this? As I'm sure.
Let's look at Pat, what he did with your boy. He resurrected Case Keenum. He's the one who did it. You know, their wide receivers, the scheme that he put them in week after week, they were able to take advantage of their talent. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, we saw them develop. Darwin Cook, the rookie from Florida State. Immediately, they had a running game, which they hadn't had since Adrian had moved on. So look for them to do the same thing with the weapons the Giants have and the running back that they have in Barkley.
And I'm going to add one other name that I think could benefit the most from Pat Shurmur. Evan Ingram, friend of ours, a guy that I think they have a big bet on via draft capital, and a guy who, when you see what Kyle Rudolph was able to do in Minnesota, I think Evan Ingram's a better athlete than him. I think Evan Ingram, and Kyle Rudolph's an excellent player. I think Evan Ingram, if he reaches full potential, can be that level player or better. How do you use Evan Ingram as a stretch the field tight end? That's another part of it, another good weapon for Eli.
All right, we're going to take a little break. Coming up on the other side, the New Orleans Saints are going to be missing one of their stars for a couple games next year, and it's not from injury. We'll tell you why next on First Things First. Time for some stories to start your morning. There's Tiger Woods. He tees off at 1:52 today. The TPC, the Players' Championship. What a group he's in. He's playing alongside Phil Mickelson and Ricky Fowler. Chris, let's dive into your wheelhouse. What do you expect from Tiger in golf's fifth major?
Not what I expect from Tiger. Tiger better shoot 4 or 5 under par, because with the depth that we have on tour now, you can't get too far behind these players. Tiger, you can't shoot 1 under, 2 under, even par the first round. Somebody going to go out there and shoot a 66. Somebody might shoot a 65. Like Tiger, the weather in Jacksonville, where TPC, where it's played, great. It's going to be 80-something degrees. It means a lot of birdies. Ball going to be flying, distance. So his driving has been good. Let's get back to old Tiger making some putts. If he makes putts, he can be in contention. I still think he's about a month, 6 weeks away from winning, getting back in the winner's circle.
He was awful with the putter in the last tournament. He needs to be better here. I just hope he scores better than Phil Mickelson. That's what I'm rooting for before we get to the weekend. I hope he beats Phil Mickelson. I think it'll be fun to watch them play together.
Okay, on to the NFL. Kurt Warner is already in the Hall of Fame, but apparently he thought about making a comeback for the upcoming season. Warner said he was in discussions with an NFL coach. The team went out and signed somebody else. CC, could the 46-year-old Warner actually have still played some football?
Nope. Absolutely not.
Why not?
There's a thing called contact, and there's a thing called avoiding contact, all right? It's hard enough when you're young to avoid contact, let alone when you get old. And you get older, your body is not meant to be hit by a young NFL player. And that right there would send Kurt Warner. And let me tell you something. What the Hall of Fame should do, if Kurt Warner goes back on the field, we're going to hold his Hall of Fame jacket.
Rescind it?
No, we're just going to hold it because he's not going to look like a Hall of Famer when he's on the field.
Man, and I watched Kurt Warner. People think of him as a Ram and then as a Cardinal. What we're not showing in this compilation are the highlights with the Giants
Yes.
when that contact came and got him. Yeah. He's not a guy that would deal with that contact that well at 36, much less 46.
According to reports, wide receiver Brandon Marshall is meeting with the Seahawks today. Marshall was released by the Giants last month after an injury-plagued season. CC, can a 34-year-old Brandon Marshall still make an impact in the NFL?
Yes, he can. Brandon's one of the best conditioned athletes that you'll ever see. He loves training, loves working out, is really committed to taking care of his body. He didn't like, in talking to him this offseason, he didn't like the way things ended with the Giants. He really thought coming there as a number 2 opposite of OBJ, but got injured early. OBJ got injured. They had an awful season. Yes, I believe he can make a contribution at 34. What I'm surprised at with Seattle is that
they bring him in and not Dez?
Yeah, not even give him a look, not even an interview. That's very surprising.
And it also shows the rehabilitation Brandon Marshall's done of his image and of his mental health.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if you consider our locker room, they're trying to tear down and rebuild in Seattle. We can handle Brandon Marshall. He might actually be an asset to the locker room. And we don't even want to look at 5-year younger Dez Bryant.
Crazy.
That's an indictment on him as well.
All right, finally, the
Great
Paul
point.
George sweepstakes is just getting underway. One potential landing spot could be the team who traded him away last season, the Indiana Pacers. Wouldn't that be something? But their GM couched it, saying that it would, quote, depend on the fit. Nick, where do you think PG-13 will eventually land?
But before I answer that, can I just talk? Because I don't think he's going to go to the Pacers, but I do want to say this. I think it'd be a great fit. I think that'd be remarkable for them. If they are able to basically loan him out to Oklahoma City for a year, get Victor Oladipo back, have Oladipo turn into that type of player. Our friend Chris Mannix has told you Paul George is a small city guy. He likes fishing. He likes more of a quiet life than you maybe would assume. So Indiana and Oklahoma City have fit his personality. So I think it'd be great for the Pacers if they could get him back. But I think he's going to Los Angeles. I think along with him will be one of the 6 best players in the league, maybe one of the 1 best players in the league in LeBron James. But I think that's where he's going. I think that's what Magic's been building towards. I think sometimes when there's smoke, there's not fire. But sometimes when there's been billowing smoke for months and months and months, it's because there's a fire. There's been a lot of smoke surrounding Paul George and the Lakers for quite some time.
And also there's been a lot of questions coming out of Indianapolis. Would they want Paul George back? When you even hear the general manager in his quotes, he talked about that as our culture's a little bit different. We don't want superstar players. We want people who just want to work hard. To me, it seemed like an indictment on Paul George because he is a superstar. To me, Jenna, it's like that old girlfriend and everything. Ain't no need to go back. Like, it ain't better. You remember it for what it was. Like, just keep it moving. Like, don't go back to old girlfriend. It's like, then she comes up with, I didn't want you anyway. Oh, I feel the same way. Paul George should move on.
For like 5 seconds, I thought you were talking about my life. And then I was like, oh, wait, we're talking about Paul George.
There are some analogous situations.
I was trying to give you something in your wheelhouse. But what you do with it, Jenna, I don't know. I put it by the rim. You can either tap it in or you can dump it.
I came at you with some sauce and I put it down.
What do you like more for Paul George, L.A. or Philly? L.A. assuming they get another guy. Not just him, L.A. or Philly.
I just think the pool of going back home, back to your home state of California, is stronger on players than people realize. Now, I think the better basketball situation is in Philadelphia. I mean, you imagine Paul George being on that team last night? I don't care who Boston have. They can bring back Gordon Hayward. They can bring back Cedric Maxwell.
Oh,
I mean, they can bring back a bunch of people. Like, it wouldn't matter with Paul George because he gives them the perimeter defender at an elite level, gives them another knockdown shooter, and another ball handler.
Well, I think that leads us to this.
Absolutely. Here we go. Sixers season came to an end last night after losing to the Celtics in Game 5. A lot of questions surrounding the process. Did it work? Are Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons enough to carry this team further next year? Does it need more processing? Here's Embiid with some thoughts on the matter.
The process, I've said this before, the process is never going to end. It's a process to get to the playoffs. We did it. It's another one to get to the, I wouldn't say the semifinals, but the conference finals. We didn't do it, so next year, that's definitely our goal.
All right, obviously a lot to be addressed this offseason.
Embiid's being a little disingenuous there. He says, our goal was not to get to the conference semifinals. His goal was to get to the conference finals. That's not what they were talking about. That's not what they were acting like. They starting with the way they ended this season after they got that 30-point lead on Cleveland, their goal was the NBA Finals. And they were being discussed as they were the Vegas favorite at one point this postseason to make the NBA Finals. So he's now resetting where their actual goal was by the end of the season. But I just want to add that. But go ahead, Jenna.
When we talked about this earlier in the show, CC, you mentioned we talked about what do the 76ers need? And while they need Ben Simmons to shoot from outside of 5 feet, and they need Joel Embiid to have a little bit more of an aggressive role, and then you casually mentioned and maybe they can get a veteran in. But I think that's in real discussions here because every time one of these, a Paul George or even a LeBron James name comes up, Philadelphia is, we talk about the Sixers as a possible landing spot. Do they need a superstar to actually compete for a championship with the team they have constructed now?
I don't know if they necessarily need a superstar, but they need a couple different players, all right? It's hard when you have a lineup that has Bellinelli, J.J. Redick, and T.J. McConnell in the lineup. The reason why, because Brad Stevens, what he did was he posted up all 3 of these players. All 3 of these players undersized. All of them are good shooters, but they're undersized, and none of them are athletic enough to be able to compete with the most athletic teams in the NBA. So you might talk about it being a superstar player. They need a wing player that has some size and can shoot. It would help this team out better, but more importantly, what they need is they need Markelle Fultz to take over the point guard spot for them. I believe that will give them the type of balance because he is a great athlete who can push the ball. He's 6'4". You can't post him up. He's not a detriment on the defensive end. So, yes, getting another player, I'm not going to hang on just it got to be a superstar, but it can't be players that are one-dimensional like Bellinelli and J.J. Redick are right now.
I am going to hang on it being a superstar for this reason. This is the only summer they can do it. People need to understand this. Because Joel Embiid's contract extension is kicking in, and because they are going to give Ben Simmons the max, and because they drafted Markelle Fultz at #1 overall and the salary that goes along with that, and because of the contract they gave Robert Covington, the only way they can sign a free agent, not trade for one, or sign a superstar, not trade for one, not give up one of these big pieces, is this summer. If they do not sign a star player this summer, they will not be able to over the next 5 years. Doesn't matter what the cap grows to, this is their window of opportunity right now. And so that's why you hear LeBron attached to them. That's why you hear Paul George attached to them. That's why, even though they'd have to trade for him, you hear Kawhi Leonard attached to them. Because they couldn't wait out Kawhi's contract. They couldn't say, oh, Kawhi, we hear he really wants to come here. We'll wait a year till he's a free agent. They wouldn't, in a year from now, they can't do it. And if you believe in Boston, the way I know you do, Jenna, the way I believe you do, Chris, about that they'll be better with Kyrie, they'll be better with Gordon Hayward, obviously they'll be better as Tatum and Brown get a year older, they need to do more. So to compete for a championship, that's not even talking about those monsters out west.
Right.
And so, yes, absolutely, 100%, they need to add someone.
So I understand everything you're saying. I understand where that window is. But do we even have this conversation, CC, had this team made it to the Eastern Conference Finals? Do we look at this team and say, you know what they need is another piece? They need one superstar and they're a complete team.
Yeah, if you're being honest, if their overall lack of athleticism, the lack of shooters at certain positions, and to me, I don't believe Ben Simmons is a point guard. He doesn't have the judgment to be a point guard. He definitely can't shoot good enough to be a point guard. Nick talks about where he has a passing advantage. Yeah, he has a slight passing advantage, but he doesn't take care of the basketball. He doesn't have the mindset, how to run a team, how to set people up. He's very, very limited at playing the point guard. He didn't play point guard at LSU. So now trying to force that on him, I believe he's playing out of position.
Well, here's the thing, though, because you and I are diametrically opposed on this specific point. I think Ben Simmons has to be your point guard, and I think he can be a transcendent point guard. But if shooting's...
Where's Fultz going to play?
I think you can play them both in the backcourt at the same time. Fultz can be your scoring two, and then on the defensive end, Fultz can guard the opposing point guard, and Simmons can guard a wing. But if shooting's your concern, unless you're going to play him at center, what position
I'm not
is
playing
shooting?
him at a position. I'm playing him because he's an athlete. It's not about he's a 2, he's a 3, he's a 4. That part is not important.
But with your dire concern about his shooting, which is legitimate, the position outside of center, whether it's 2, 3, 4, whether you're saying positionless, that you can get away with being a deficit as a shooter more than any of the others. You can't be a deficit as a shooter as a wing. I
just think you're getting too caught up with the point guard position, all right? He's a good athlete we're going to have on the floor. He's going to handle the ball some, but he is not a traditional point guard. He does not have the skill set. He can't run an offense, and it's important, Nick, he can't shoot.
I understand, but the important him not being able to shoot is no matter the position he's playing, that matters. I would argue it matters more in the positions you're talking about. But I disagree with you on if you can run an offense. But to Jenna's question, would we be talking about this had they won this round? Listen, Philly is trying, the process is about trying to win a championship. And this team is presently constituted, unless the Warriors break up, unless Chris Paul gets old quick, are not ready to compete with the Warriors and the Rockets. Now, if they're saying we're going to take the super long view, we're going to wait those guys out, we're worried about 2021 and 2022, that's fine. But they could go be the league favorites to win the title if they sign LeBron. They could be one of the top favorites if they get Kawhi or Paul George. This is the summer to do it. I absolutely would go all in on that, 100%.
You know what? Normally on this show, we sort of frown upon people just walking onto the set in the middle of a song. Unless you're C.J. McCollum.
Unless you're a real damn guard. If you're a real guard in the NBA, step forward. Oh, we got one. Oh, can you shoot outside 3 feet? Oh, we got one. Can you run an offense? Oh, we got one. And he just happened to be from OHIO.
We are back after this.
What's up, baby?
Back here at First things first, we welcome in Blazer star C.J. McCollum. Hey, C.J., thanks for coming back.
Good to see you guys.
Last time you were here, we didn't have a true vision of how the conference finals were going to go on both sides, and now we do. So we were like, we need somebody to come in and break it down, and all eyes and signs pointed to you. No pressure. Just try to get it all right. Okay?
Jenna is under this thing where all athletes are under this extreme pressure. Pressure is one of her things.
You're not under pressure when you go out there on the court sometimes?
There's always pressure, but some players don't feel it. Some players rise to the occasion, and others crumble.
That's how I feel about this show, CJ. It's the same thing. Like, these guys are always stressed out, and I just rise above it.
Oh, Jenna, cool as a cucumber.
I just calm them down.
Nothing neurotic about her.
Not a big surprise that the Celtics and Cavs are squaring off in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not even a huge surprise that Tatum, Brown, and Rozier have been playing lights out this postseason. It is sort of a surprise that the Celtics are where they are without Kyrie Irving and without Gordon Hayward and without Larry Bird. Eastern Conference Finals Game 1 is Sunday. CJ, I'll start with you. What do you think the Celtics have to do to upset the Cavaliers now moving forward?
Well, obviously, everything starts with LeBron James, so trying to figure out a way to slow him down because you can't stop him. He's going to get his, he's going to distribute, he's going to rebound and kind of control the tempo of the game. But I think the difference with the Cavs is the second guy and the third guy. Kevin Love was great down the stretch of that last series. They kind of force-fed him to allow him to get into a rhythm, and then he was knocking down threes. He was finishing around the basket. But the production from J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith is knocking down threes. Obviously, he played great. He got to go off the last few days, so he should be relaxed and laid back, heading into this next series. If they have 3 guys that contribute or 5 guys in double figures, as they did in the last game, I feel like they'll be very, very hard to beat until they get to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important, the Celtics, Brad Stevens, what type of plan he comes up with LeBron. Because if you look at their starting lineup right now, they got Baines starting at the 5, Al Horford starting at the 4, and then they got these young kids at the 3 and the 2, Tatum and Brown. They don't have anyone in their lineup that can slow LeBron down. No. So do they go to a smaller lineup? Do they put Baines on the bench, Horford at the 5, bring in someone else to build through? Because right now, these guys are playing 30 to 36 minutes. They don't have an answer for LeBron. So what I look for, Brad, is not what they do initially. That's one of the things, but what are they going to counterpunch? We saw Joel Embiid begin to dominate. What they start to do, they start to take the ball out of his hands. They start double-teaming him, which they don't typically do with the Celtics. So for me, what do they do initially? Watch that. But then what's their counterpunch to LeBron being effective offensively? Because I believe LeBron, he's going to go off in this series, going to average about 38 points, at least in this series.
And he has owned personally the Celtics over the last few years. He's 10-1 personally against them in the playoffs. He's won his last 6 games in Boston. But the other thing that happened last night that mattered is the Eastern Conference Finals schedule came out. And it's a bummer for Boston because a whole lot of rest early in this series. They play Sunday, so that'll be a week since the Cavs played last. Then they play Tuesday, only 1 day off. And then between games 2 and 3 is 3 full days of rest. They play Tuesday and then not again till Saturday.
They're giving them 1 travel day.
Right. No, they're giving them 3 days off. Not 2 days off. They're giving them, they are off Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because they want the series to be extended. So instead of 2 days off, they have 3 full days off in between games 2 and 3, right? Like that's
big.
Why is that?
No, well, it's great for LeBron. It's great. You can play LeBron
it's
45
based on the TV
minutes.
schedule. They want to start the finals at a certain date.
Exactly right. They want to start the NBA finals on a certain date, and they want to have as many. There are certain days of the week that are better for ratings.
But you meant it's bad for Boston.
It's bad for Boston because LeBron's going to be playing 3 games in 12 days. Like he's
that
gonna.
never happens.
Say it again.
That never happens in the regular season ever.
Right, and he played all 82 this year. And then they played back-to-back days or every other day in the second round. And they went 7 games in the first round. LeBron's going to be fresh for the first time since the All-Star break. Like, this is what this means for him in particular. Celtics are all young, like, except for Horford. They can play. They want to play as much as possible. Like, they're feeling great about how they are right now. Yeah, the time off will be good for them. But that is such an advantage for the oldest team in the league, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and for LeBron James, who's carried the heaviest workload of any player in the league this year.
Look, the question is always going to be, moving forward, every game, as long as you're facing LeBron James, am I right? How do you stop him? How do you slow him down? What's the game plan you put into place if you're Boston? I mean, you understand what it's like to be on the court against him. What does it take? What do you have to do?
I mean, he's averaging 34, 9, and 9 up to this point, so I don't think you can stop him, but you can force him into uncomfortable positions. I think you send a double team randomly at times on the first or second dribble, especially down the stretch of games. You don't let him have a chance to take game winners. You have to take the ball out of his hands and make somebody else do it. You've seen Jordan, he had to pass at times, in the prime of his career because of guys just being wide open and being able to shoot. So that's one of the things you have to do, and Kobe talked about it. He likes to go left, especially down the stretch of games. He hit a lot of game winners going left. The three-pointer was left. The quick lay against Indiana Pacers was left. But he can go right. He can counter with the spin move. So you have to be cognizant of all those things, understanding that he's going to get his.
I think it's more important you shut down the other players because we know LeBron, he's been so consistent, as consistent as any player we've ever seen in the playoffs or in pressure games, but the other players and how the rest of the team function. If Kevin Love gets 20 points, if JR gets 15, if Kyle Korver gets 15 to 20, so they got to overplay the three-point line. A lot like they did Philadelphia when they started out. The only difference was Joel Embiid, they played him single. LeBron is going to get 35 to 40 if you single cover him compared to the way Philadelphia with their younger shooters. They couldn't make enough shots early, and Joel Embiid couldn't punish them enough. One of the hidden things, I believe, is watch foul trouble. Watch LeBron getting the younger players and watch LeBron getting the whistle going against younger players.
Well, to your point about it's about the other guys, round one, that they easily could have lost to Indiana. They win in 7. They are outscored by 40 points in that series. LeBron averaged 35, 10, and 8. Round 2, where they sweep Toronto, LeBron averaged 35, 8, and 11. So his production, like tomato, A plus one series, A plus the other.
Yes.
The difference was the supporting players. They had nobody get to 20 points in round 1.
Yep.
They had guys
Kevin Love, the only one averaging double figures for the Cavs, averaging 11 points a game.
in round 1, and then in round 2.
LeBron's got 5 other guys averaging double figures in the second series against Toronto.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you guys hit it right on the head, but the difference between, the teams they played up to this point is that Boston can defend with all 5 positions. You've seen the impact Marcus Smart made, being able to guard the 4, being able to guard point guards. He took a charge down the stretch that he didn't call it. He got some clutch stops down the stretch, and I think they're going to move him
that big stop
around.
against Sarge.
Right. So they had wings guarding 4s. Look for them to try to mix and match in the upcoming series because of Jaylen Brown being out there, because of Tatum. They might put some of those guys on Kevin Love at times.
And I think that the Boston does have, much like Indiana, bodies to throw at LeBron. Now, again, I just laid out the stats. He had the same stats against Indiana and Toronto. But if you watched the game, man, it looked like it was easy against Toronto. It really looked like LeBron was working for everything against Indiana. I thought it was smart that they were, when he was bringing the ball up court, they were picking him up 80 feet just to make him use energy. Right. That's something I want to ask your opinion on, because I think it's underrated for the audience. When a team's picking you up full court, it's not because they think they're going to turn you over like in high school. It's because they're just trying to make you exert energy as much as possible, wear you out, and how tiring that is.
Yeah, a lot of teams try to turn you a couple times, and we even implement that in certain series against certain players. Obviously, James Harden being one who handles the ball a lot. You want them to have to work for everything. So you don't want them to just be able to comfortably dribble it up, orchestrate the offense and set up their pick and rolls. You want them to have to work to get across half court. You want them to have to work to get into pick and rolls, and it wears you down.
Yeah, they want you to work, but also they want you to work against the shot clock. All right? You got 16 to get the ball to midcourt. And then after that, they like you to be around 12 seconds to be able to run your offense. So you don't have to play great defense for the whole 24 seconds in the shot clock, which is exhausting, for NBA players. All
right, CJ, don't go anywhere. That was the East. How about the West? Can the Rockets dethrone the Warriors? We'll break that down next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First with CJ McCollum. So the conference finals are set. We previewed the East. If you want to know how the West was won, hitch your wagon to either the bright star of the Warriors or the equally bright star of the Rockets. Both teams with stellar resumes coming into the finals. League-leading Rockets, winners of 65 games, facing the defending champion Warriors. Nick, I'll start with you. What do you think? Rockets have a chance to knock off the Golden State Warriors?
Of course they have a chance, but I also think they're better. I mean, maybe we'll look back on this and I'll say, what was I thinking? You got 2 MVPs, you got 4 Hall of Famers, you got a team that was in third gear, if not second gear, most of the season. But I can't get over this one number, 50-5. 50-5. That is what the Rockets were this year with Harden, CP3, and Capella.
Wow.
That's an amazing number. When their big three played,
no, well, I didn't look nice.
Right, like that. I mean, that means something. It's not a small sample size. Yeah. That is not. There's no. It was against weak competition.
No, and you've been talking about that number for over 2 months.
Because for real, because it was 39-3. It was jarring to me because when the Rockets, they only lost 17 times. But for 12 of those losses, or actually, 14 of those losses, because the 50-5 includes the playoffs, to have come when one of those guys wasn't in the lineup, you just saw how dominant they were with their core. And the Rockets have something that the only team the Warriors have faced at this round of the playoffs ever had going for them, and that was the team that damn near beat them, Oklahoma City. They're fully healthy. The Warriors are used to, in the playoffs, getting what they got this playoffs again. Some injury luck. No Kawhi. No Boogie. They've faced the Rockets in the past when they didn't have their point guard. They faced you guys when you guys didn't have Nurkic, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they've had a lot of good injury luck. That is not applying.
The Rockets got some of that luck in the semifinals.
Absolutely
with
right.
Utah.
And what the Warriors also have never had to deal with in this entire run in any series until this one. So this ain't starting at Oracle. This isn't starting at home. And so for all those reasons, yes, I think the Rockets can beat them. I'll pick the Rockets to beat them in 7.
What do you think, CJ?
Wait. you think they're going to, not only do you think they're going to win, you think they're better.
Yeah, I do. I think that go ahead. Tell me.
No, I definitely think the Rockets can win. Obviously, look at the roster they put together, bringing in P.J. Tucker. I think that's going to be a big help for them because he can potentially match up with Draymond when they go small with that Hampton 5 lineup. And then you also have Mbamute, who's a really good defender. Although KD's going to get his buckets, he's going to score. He can guard him better than a chair. As they say, most of the series he's been shooting over chairs because the guys are too short. So with that being said, I still think the Warriors are probably going to win. I think they have the advantage in experience, having played together. This is a lot of Rockets players' first time in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, CP will rise to the occasion as he showed last game, carrying the shoulder of the load, 10 assists, no turnovers, 40 points, career high, 20 in the fourth quarter. But I think that 4 All-Stars, KD is ultimately the difference. If they can slow him down a little bit, they have a chance to win.
I think Houston has a better chance than any other team because more so than I don't agree with you on the Boston series as far as Boston has bodies to throw at LeBron. I think they got people, but I don't like their body types.
I thought they had more bodies than Toronto did, is my point.
More than Toronto.
Yes, go ahead.
But KD, I believe that Houston, Bellamute, I believe their bodies, P.J. Tucker, and their rotation of guys that they can throw at KD presents the biggest problem that KD will have had in this year's playoff and last year's playoff. The Cavs didn't have anything that they can do with them. We know that. So I like Houston's chances. I think also Golden State, we always talk about, man, they're one of the best defensive teams. They're going to have to play the best defense they've ever played in a series because what Houston presents to you with the high pick and roll, if they try to play small, with Capella and Harden in that high pick and roll, I believe that gives them a problem, and they have so many shooters. Typically, they're used to defending 1 or 2 great shooters, but they got 4 or 5 guys that are just knockdown cold shooters, and I believe that gives Golden State more problems than we've seen them have in the playoffs.
I think one of the issues Houston's going to have with the Warriors is the fact that Draymond can guard everybody on the court. So in the last series, you had Rudy at the 5, right? So CP and James are taking turns, running pick and rolls with him, getting the switch, going to work. CP likes to shoot that step back corner 3. But with Draymond, he's sitting down. They're going to switch, and James is going to have to, between cross and get to the cup and make plays. But it's not going to be as easy as it was to get to the lane and to, obviously play one-on-one with Draymond potentially switching.
Yeah, see, I hope they play Draymond. I hope they play that small lineup because I believe that Houston should stick with Capella because he can guard Draymond. It's not like you got to worry about him.
Right.
Like, Draymond, how many shots he going to hit? He's not going to blow past him. So I believe it plays in Houston's favor where they can play big, force Golden State to play small. I believe that's a huge advantage for the Houston Rockets.
Skill-wise, it seems like you're all saying this could go 7 games. Then they match up. If both teams are healthy and both teams are playing,
I think CJ's more confident in
the Warriors.
The Warriors can finish it up.
My question to you is that because of that one thing you brought up, which is experience, which is normally not that tangible thing that we like to talk about, but you said, hey, they've got the experience. How much does that really factor in here when you're talking about the conference finals, a team that's won 65 games? Are they really at a disadvantage with that?
I don't necessarily think they're in a disadvantage because these are elite players. James is an elite player, probably going to win MVP this season. CP is an elite player who understands the game and how to manipulate certain situations. But with that being said, the Warriors have play calls for days out of timeouts. They know what to run down the stretch. They know how to get advantages in terms of running a pick and roll with Steph and KD, which is very hard to guard because once you get a smaller guy on KD, it's curtains down the stretch. So with that being said, I just think that with the execution standpoint and the way the Warriors score is completely different than the Rockets. There's movement without the ball. There's cutting, playing off the split post. So it's not just guarding somebody one-on-one, which you can do in this league. It's understanding that there's going to be movement, and Steph and them can play one-on-one, shoot threes off the dribble, and that changes the entire dynamic because they have to work on both sides of the ball.
Question for you. Does Houston and what they're going to have to do and the different looks, and no one plays basketball like Golden State offensively, do you think that affects Houston and their ability to play what we've seen? Nick, you said their offense is the most efficient that we've seen?
Well, yeah, they at the tail end of the year, it tailed off. But at one point, they had the highest scoring offense per 100 possessions in the history of the NBA. Ended up being about 5th. But this Golden State team ended up being about 9th.
Right. Do you think them playing defense affects that?
I think they can play defense. The only thing you fear with this series, obviously stretching out, there's a lot of days to rest in between, is the fact that, James and CP are going to have to score 25 to 30, each night.
Yes.
Or get contributions from Trev, from, as you said before, Clint Capella, who reportedly the Phoenix Suns offered a max, so cha-ching. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, can they still score 25 to 30 while chasing those guys around? Or does the Houston Rockets use mix and match? So you allow James to kind of rest on defense.
Well, that's where, by the way, I mentioned Klay Thompson potentially being the X factor in this series. Right. I think Steph's going to get his. I think KD's going to get his. I would, if they are going to play that Hamptons 5, I would ask Harden to guard Iggy as much as possible so he can rest somewhat on defense. I think Harden's strong enough to deal with Iggy. He's got a slight height disadvantage, but they don't want Iggy.
And Iggy's not posting up a lot.
Iggy's not there. But there is a template, however, that we've seen, and I think that some of the tape the Cavs need to be watching is the 2016 finals, not only because that's the only series this Warriors team's ever lost, but what they did in determining every time Steph is on the court, if we can, we are going to run action to get him defending the ball.
You're talking about Houston, watch Cleveland.
Yes, if I didn't say it right, I apologize. Houston, watch what Cleveland did. Because LeBron, it almost looked like he had a vendetta. Like, it wasn't that. It was the right basketball play. But we are going to get Steph switched onto the ball handler, coming off, by the way, similarly as in 2016, a sprained MCL where he maybe isn't moving laterally as well as he would like, and we are going to make him defend. We are going to exhaust him, and we are going to make, this, you and Steph are about the same size. Do I have that right?
I'm probably a little taller, probably weigh a little bit more.
Oh, right, but so he's not drastically, obviously, but he's not drastically. People think Steph's this tiny guy.
No, he's
not. Steph's 6'3", you know what I mean? He's a little bit smaller than you. It's exhausting when you have to go through screens all game, right? Like the physical toll it puts on you. That's something that I think Houston has to do. I think they have to hunt out Steph on defense.
Yeah, and they've done that all season. They take advantage of matchups. They pick out who they want strategically, and that's why I don't think there's a disadvantage in the experience because CP studies the game. He understands that, for them to be successful in this series, they have to exploit certain matchups, whether that be when JaVale McGee's in the game, putting him in pick and rolls, understanding that James is able to draw fouls, so get the switch. And if you can get Steph, if you can get KD or Klay in foul trouble, then they're out of the game. You don't have to worry about them.
All right, CJ, keep hanging out with us. Coming up, should we still trust the process? Next on First Things First. So much to talk about with Blazers star CJ McCollum. Thankfully, he's here, so it makes the conversation easier. 76 Celtics. Also, the Sixers and the Celtics. Game 5, Ben Simmons faking out Marcus Smart.
This is just miscommunication, right, CJ? You got him in switch. Oh, man, what happened?
Yeah, you got a deadly shooter coming off, or a guy who's a threat in J.J. Redick, and you're taught to chase over screens, don't allow him to get easy baskets, and Simmons makes a good read in the half court.
They give him the easiest basket imaginable to Ben Simmons.
All right, same game, same guy. This time Simmons gets the spinning 360 in traffic. He gets it to fall.
Man, he gets himself up in there. The Little League coaches tell you, never jump in there not knowing what you're going to do. Unless you're 6'10", and you got unbelievable athletic ability. Switch his hand, shoots it with his right.
That's tough. He likes to finish with his right hand in the paint, too. So that's a tough finish and a smart play by him.
You think his jump shot can be resurrected, but can be fixed?
I think it can, but I think he has to start from scratch.
Well,
I think he might have to switch hands.
That's where he is, so good for him.
He might be shooting with the wrong hand.
Sticking with this game, because it was the only one last night, Marcus Smart to Jason Tatum for the alley-oop. 1, 2, and then
that is a perfect pass by Marcus Smart that I don't know that he could duplicate if you gave him 100 more tries. Going that speed at that angle.
When you watch Marcus Smart, if you're cheering for the other team, you hate him. If he's on your team, you're like, man, good hustle.
How frustrating is it for him to guard you?
I like Smart, so it's fun. I like the challenge of guys who compete, who enjoy the game.
That right there means he can't stop me. I like having him on me.
Your words, not mine.
All right, finally, Jason Tatum getting it done again, this time dropping Robert Covington, hitting the step-back jumper.
Broke his ankles, man.
I like him, and it's ironic that, his pick was traded from the Sixers. I think he took that personal this series.
Is that something NBA players, because I know as fans in the internet, man, we love to see someone get crossed over, drop them to the floor.
You do. You enjoy it. You enjoy breaking somebody off, hearing the crowd, and then you focus in on making the shots just like you in the driveway.
All right, it's safe to say, CJ, that the process turned into the process of elimination last night for the Philadelphia 76ers. Great season, not so great playoff run. The Sixers, after defeating the Heat in 5 games, were sent packing by the Celtics in 5 games. 114-112 was your final last night. Simmons, Embiid, both bright, confident stars coming in, both question marks coming out. Sixers come up short. The process is now in question. CJ McCollum, what went so wrong for Philadelphia?
I think down the stretch of games, their lack of experience, their lack of execution really cost them. They had some chances to put games away. You look at, a couple of games ago, it was tied up, ball out of bounds. You get a turnover, give the Boston Celtics a chance to score down 2.
Yeah. Didn't even get a shot.
Didn't get a shot. And then you also had opportunity to offensive rebound, under 24 on the shot clock. You could have pulled the ball out and got fouled, and that's what you talked about. I don't know if he wanted to shoot the free throws or not, what the case may be, but that's a chance where time and score, you realize that you pull it out.
Yeah, not to pile on, those both 2 mistakes by Ben Simmons. He was the one inbound in the pass, threw it away. He was the one also with the offensive rebound.
And should have pulled it out, absolutely.
Yeah, but there was other lack of experience plays to where they didn't get loose balls. Maybe it was the effort. Obviously, you're trying to win games, and that's kind of the same thing we went through with New Orleans. In the first couple games, they outplayed us, they out-hustled us, and obviously we're not trying to lose, but they got every 50-50 ball. They made every big shot. They made free throws down the stretch.
So just talk to me about the adjustment process within a series. You're saying all that happened to you. Was there no plan to adjust within the series, or is it just too hard at that point, and were the Sixers just unable to do it against Boston?
I'm sure they tried to adjust, but once you get down 2-0, once you get down 3-0, the numbers are against you, the odds are against you, and you're trying to get one game at a time, but it's hard. And when a team understands that no team has ever come back from 3-0, the pressure rises and the other team gets a little bit more comfortable.
Well, and when you play a series where it went 5 games, Game 1 was decisively won by Boston. Game 4 was decisively won by Philly. Game 2, 3, and 5 were 50-50 games. I think most of the game, actually, 75-25 Philly games.
Yeah.
And they lost all 3. Like, they were up 22 points in the mid-second quarter of Game 2, and they lost. They were up 4 with less than a minute left in overtime of Game 3. And they lost. They were up 4 with less than 90 seconds left last night, and they lost. If you go 0 for 3 on games that you have control of at the end, you can't win. Like, they could have won this series 4-1. With better late-game execution, this series could be over in their favor. That's jarring that it happened the way it did.
Yeah, from a coaching standpoint, too, you could see the Celtics made some tremendous adjustments. Even in last night's game, they decided, okay, we're going to start TJ. All right, Brad Stevens, you know what he told him? You know what? We're going to bang him. We're going to post him up. They ate him alive to start the game. What they start to do late in the game, you might have forgot what their game plan was. No, Boston went right back. In the fourth quarter, they went right back to posting up whoever they thought was the weak link in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, they hit the 3-ball this year at pace. They ran and shot the 3. They weren't able to do this in this 5-game series.
We've been talking a lot about Ben Simmons. I know we're going to get back to it. But the other part of this that we thought, or at least I thought, where Philly was going to have a major advantage was Joel Embiid either against Baines or Horford, and he was totally neutralized. I thought he was outplayed by Horford. He got his points, but he was inefficient from a shooting perspective, and he averages more turnovers than any post-up big man that I can remember. He was turning the ball over 3 times a game. Like, you handle the ball all the time. 3 turnovers is the most you're comfortable with in a game, right? Maybe 4?
Yeah, you're trying to turn the ball over, but that's another thing. Him trying to score, trying to, generate some offense for that team, understanding that they were facing elimination. He's essentially the one who coined the trust the process, so he felt like the pressure was going to be on him, and he had a chance to finish down in the paint late in that game and smoke the layup. But I thought that he played hard. I thought that Al Horford's experience, having played in the playoffs, being a jack-of-all-trades guy who can shoot the three, he can initiate an offense, he can defend multiple positions. I think that showed, and people complained about him being an all-star. People complained about the amount of money he makes, but I think he's a guy most teams and players would want to play with.
CJ, one of the things we've been talking about all morning is what the final piece is for this Sixers team if they're going to take it to the next level next year. And it's maybe bringing in a big superstar, a Paul George, a LeBron James, whoever they could possibly get. Do you think that's what they're missing, is one big superstar for them to take it one step further in this process?
I don't even necessarily think they need a superstar. Obviously, that would help if they got another player, but I think internal development is going to be big. Guys have gotten better over the course of their career. Obviously, they were hurt at the beginning. Implementing J.J. Redick, a veteran guy who can shoot, who can do a lot of different things, helped them. Marco, who hit the big shot they thought was the walk-off game winner, he's helped them immensely. But I think the biggest transformation is going to come from within. Embiid, understanding that he's got to take care of the ball, make better decisions in the post when the double team comes. I think that's going to come as he gets more experience, and the mask could have played a factor in his vision. And then I think the development of Ben Simmons, once he gets a jump shot, whether that's 15 feet, 12 feet, whatever the case may be, that changes how you guard them. And then the number 1 pick, Markelle Fultz, getting more comfortable in playing.
When you say once Ben Simmons gets a jump shot, I believe it's impossible that he comes back next year. No. Not impossible that he gets jump shot. That he comes back next year the same shooter. I think it's impossible that he doesn't come back next year as a markedly improved shooter. Now, that doesn't mean he needs a 3. Doesn't mean he has a 3. But a guy that he only took 2 shots out of the paint the entire series. Like, that's jarring. That is to CeCe's point. How likely is it, in your eyes, as a player developing between year 1 and year 2 at 20 years old, that he comes back next year as a plausible shooter?
Yeah, he's actually year 3 to 4, compare year 1 to 2.
Well, you mean he's actually year 2 to 3. But,
2 to 3,
but
yes.
Okay, well, after 1 year of playing at 20 years old.
I think it's just going to depend on how much he loves this game, how much time and effort he puts into it. He seems to be obsessed with the game in terms of, watching Magic, breaking down film on LeBron and doing things of that nature. But even Magic had a nice set shot. He could knock down an open 3. He was able to hit mid-range and keep the defense honest. So for him to make that next step and for them to have that elite spacing that they pride themselves on in terms of being able to shoot threes, if he's a threat to shoot the ball, it changes how you guard their whole team.
Right. The other thing about Magic Johnson, I talked to my brother a lot about basketball. And he said that we're in an era now where we just grab Magic Johnson, Lonzo Ball. Oh, he's the next Magic Johnson. We think that everyone that has height and can dribble the ball somewhat, like they're the next point guard at 6'10". We had one time in NBA history, how long we been playing the game, Nick?
Well, 93 years, something like that?
We had one point guard at 6'10". So now to think we're just going to find one on the side of the road, like Magic was always a point guard. Even at youth basketball, he was the biggest guy, but he was always a point guard. In high school, he was a point guard. In college, he was a point guard. At what point has Ben Simmons been a point guard? At none. He might have been a point forward at LSU. His basketball fundamentals weren't enhanced there. By that, stay there. And now I worry more about he doesn't have the mentality of a guard. All right, he's a bigger guy who handles the ball fairly well for a bigger guy, but the ability to make other players better, to set other players up, to get them the ball where they want to. I don't see that skill, so there's other things that I am worried about besides his shoot.
Should I stay or should I go, said Kawhi Leonard all last season. The San Antonio Spurs star seems to want to be anywhere other than San Antonio. He's been linked to trade rumors since his injury controversy this season and was spotted at a Dodgers game in Los Angeles last night. For reference, he didn't attend one playoff game, but he made it to the Dodgers game. One NBA exec said Kawhi is, quote, as good as gone. Nick, let me start with you. You buying that Kawhi is leaving the Spurs?
Yes.
Good talk.
And I don't want to overreact to him going to this baseball game. But I think that's a terrible look for Kawhi because he didn't go to any of the Spurs playoff games. To not go to a Spurs, even their home playoff games, even the home playoff games right after the head coach's wife tragically passes away. To not go ahead, see.
The only thing about that part is I know Kawhi was in communication with Coach Pop, and they had Kawhi was going to come back if he was going to coach, but he knew that the coach wasn't going to come back, so that's when he decided to stay away. It was kind of agreed upon that he would continue to do his rehab.
And I had heard that as well. That if after the death of Pop's wife, that he was going to coach.
He was in communications with Coach Popovich.
And I understand that part of it. But to not show up to one of those playoff games, even when the coach isn't going to be there, maybe even more of a reason to show up as a team leader, as the best guy on the team, when your season's on the line, even if you're not going to play, when you obviously can travel, that to me is, whether you agree or disagree with the decision, that to me is all the proof I need that he has mentally moved on from the Spurs as being a member of that basketball team.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, though, he can't go to the Dodgers game. If you're in Los Angeles, why can't I go to a sporting event? Why can't I go see the Dodgers play? Well, what am I supposed to do? Not do anything this summer because I didn't go to the playoff games? I'm not supposed to go to no sporting event when I would normally, in my routine, I would go to some baseball games. I would potentially go to other NBA playoff games. I don't think just because I missed the season, a great portion of the season and the playoffs, I'm not going to go anywhere socially. That has nothing to do with my decision, do I want to be in San Antonio or not?
Listen, I'm not saying he can't go to the games. What I am saying is the only, I thought, plausible rationale that could square the circle of Kawhi wants to be with the Spurs and Kawhi isn't at these playoff games is the rehab in New York is so intensive he has to stay there. And if he is just chilling in Los Angeles, I'm not judging him for going to the game. It's just, to me, further evidence that he has decided, I'm not on the Spurs anymore.
Well, the evidence has been there. It's just a matter of when people wanted to look at it or not. So now, because he's going to a baseball game, you're like, wow.
Well, I've been saying that I thought he was going. I just think it's further evidence of it. But go ahead.
Yeah, listen, I get a little upset when people in sports are people who are famous that now they can't do other stuff that normal people can do. If a normal person can go to a baseball game, well, damn, I can go to a baseball game. Kawhi going to a baseball game in L.A., it's not a bad look for him, and it's not sending some type of message that he's gone from San Antonio or not, all right? Their relationship and what happened, him being misdiagnosed by San Antonio, all right, that's not going to go away, all right? They're not going to be able to change that anytime soon.
What do you think is going to happen next year? Do you still, I mean, I know you have gone sort of back and forth on whether he comes back or not. So him going to a Dodgers game, none of that factors into where you are with where Kawhi ends up next year.
Okay, first, I have not gone back and forth as far as is Kawhi going to stay in San Antonio or is he going to leave? The potential of him leaving San Antonio, that's real, all right? That's a real thing. Kawhi being upset at the management there at San Antonio, that's a real thing. People in Kawhi's group that want him to leave San Antonio, that's a real thing. That got nothing to do with Chris Carter.
Sure.
Now, I just know it's hard to turn down that max contract.
They can offer him, so the audience understands, they can offer him $219 million. No other team can offer more than around $140 million. It is a drastic sum of money he would have to turn down. And that's why the misdiagnosis part of this has to be part of the math you do. Because if the rationale or the thought initially was Kawhi wants to leave San Antonio so he can get a richer shoe deal.
No, that wasn't. He would have never, if he wouldn't have been injured, he would have never approached ever leaving. That thought wouldn't have come in his head.
Okay, so that's critical that people understand because you cannot make up, Kawhi Leonard cannot make up the money. If it's about a shoe deal, that means it's about money. And no shoe deal is going to make up the money that he would be leaving on the table by leaving San Antonio. It would have to be about more than that. Tell me if you think this is fair. Not just a misdiagnosis, but then a pressure to come back and play. Some of the things Parker and Ginobili said that our friend Steven Jackson thinks they would only say with the consent from Greg Popovich. Maybe an unfair representation in Kawhi's eyes of what he was really going through.
I think it has a big deal to do, zero to do with the players, all right? Because they're not going to be around there. They're not players that are part of San Antonio's future. Now, thinking that Kawhi took some message, that it was an indirect message from Popovich, I don't believe Kawhi is looking at it that way. But it's a real situation. Man, how many superstars? Am I going to be able to get another superstar to be able to come to San Antonio? That's real. And I believe that and the injury led to Kawhi believe, is this the best place for my basketball future, which led us to where we are right now.
If it's about the money, if this whole thing was about money, that's where you're going to get the most money, is by staying in San Antonio. He has shown in my opinion, he has shown zero signs of committing to San Antonio, of wanting to be on this Spurs team, of wanting to play for the Spurs.
And when it comes to the max contract and the money, it should be noted, because of the way things have gone, I'm not as certain that it's a foregone conclusion that they offer him the full max contract, that they even put that in front of him. You also have to keep in mind the owners.
If they do that, then he's definitely going to leave.
But you got to keep in mind this part of it, and no one's talked about this. The owner of the Spurs and his wife got a divorce. And I bring that up because the financial ramifications of that, as the Peter Holt, and I think it's Juliana Holt, she's now running, like, it's an odd situation there. And we've seen this in sports before, where there's a divorce at the ownership level, what that does for the individual finances. A team like San Antonio that's not in a super lucrative market.
The team is concerned about the difference in that 70 to 80 million they would have to pay. So the divorce might play a role. So it's not just Kawhi, it's also the organization. But if the organization decides to do that, divorce or no divorce, they need Kawhi. They need to offer him the max. If they don't, there's a great probability he won't be there.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, the Cavs live and die by LeBron James, but is that a sustainable formula? It's next on First Things First. At least he's getting paid for it. On to the NFL. Cowboys CEO Stephen Jones yesterday said he just wants Dak Prescott to go out and be MVP this year. That's it, nothing else. Literally just do that and we'll all be good. Great expectations, Stephen. CC, what do you make of what Stephen Jones said?
Oh, we don't want nothing from the boy. We just want him to be MVP. Ain't no real high expectation what we do here in Dallas. We expect the quarterback. He got that straw in his helmet. We expect good things from him. That's it. Regardless, he ain't got no wide receivers. He throw the Cole Beasley in the slot. Little white lightning. Yeah, no problem. Just no expectations. MVP. That's it.
Listen, I would focus more on Dak being MVP of the team, because that's a tough putt for him. Yeah. That's Zeke.
That would be an impressive
It'd be an impressive feat. If there's going to be an MVP on the Dallas Cowboys, it will be Ezekiel Elliott.
All right, Adrian Peterson spent the first 10 seasons of his career with the Vikings. Last season, he spent some time with the Saints and Cardinals. Now he says his neck is completely healthy. He wants back in. He still wants to play in the NFL. You think he can, CC? Can Adrian Peterson still contribute to a team?
I think it's going to be hard to find a spot for Adrian Peterson. Now, I will say, potentially maybe a wild card. The rookie going into his second year in Minnesota. The people in Minnesota still like Adrian Peterson. Say Dalvin Cook, he doesn't come back healthy, has a slow start. Maybe they bring him back as a little farewell tour. But besides that, I don't see a fit. Now, after training camp, maybe an injury, but I don't see a fit. I don't see him playing 2018.
I thought Adrian Peterson was done last season. So
yeah, you were up on that.
I certainly don't think he can play this season. I think that is the last we have seen of future first ballot Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson in the NFL.
All right, Cowboys defensive end Randy Gregory is reportedly going through the steps to apply for reinstatement into the NFL. The league suspended Gregory in January of 2017 for at least a year after violating the substance abuse policy. CeCe, how much will it mean to the Cowboys if Gregory can get back out on the field?
It would mean a great deal. You're talking about an explosive player. We talked about Dallas with their lack of playmakers on the offensive end. If you put him on the outside, opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence, their ability to be able to get to the quarterback, he can be a star in this league. You're talking about a guy 24, 25, who can give your organization 10 sacks per year. And the reason why it's important to me is I've been involved in his recovery. It's an important aspect of my life. He's around the same age that I was at when I got cut by Philadelphia and started trying to get my life together, trying to give him some of the same tools. I see him going through that process, trying to provide for his family, trying to restart his NFL career. He wants to be in the NFL. He's really, really worked hard at it. And I've talked to Roger Goodell about this. I want I want some better stories to come from the NFL. We talk about guys flunking drug tests, guys struggling with alcohol, guys in substance abuse programs, but we don't hear them get to the part where I got to, and you start to hear the successes. Now me having 27 and a half years involved in the program and having the power to have victory in my life every day, I want to see some of these guys have success and because they have the same story that I had. I just want to be able to change it like people were able to help change my story.
All right, so I got just a couple quick questions for you about Randy Gregory, because this was a guy who was a first-round talent who fell in the draft because, if I remember correctly, failed a drug test at the combine and then failed drug tests in college. He then gets to the NFL. He fails drug tests. The reason you believe now, or you know now, that he is actually committed to recovery and committed to sobriety, how much of that can you share? Like why you are comfortable advocating for him, as opposed to in the past where he didn't seem to be ready to try to take this step?
Well, he's completed a program that I believe works. It's a program that I work closely with, and a lot of people involved in the program. And I understand substance abuse. I understand alcoholism. It's a disease. If he had cancer, we wouldn't throw him out the league. We would try to do everything we could to get him the appropriate treatment. But we don't look at alcoholism and drug addiction the same we do cancer. Cancer's a disease, alcoholism is a disease, and he needs to be able to get treatment. Even if they fall back on that and they make a mistake, I believe in them. I believe in sticking with them. I believe in giving them multiple chances, because that is the true essence of what substance abuse is about. It's about giving people a chance to try to give them the power that they can have over the substance in their life, that eventually they can go on to live a productive life.
And in your eyes, and with the information you have, he is, for the first time, taken the serious, significant steps to doing the best to combat it.
Yeah, he's in a great place today, and we're pulling for him. I have written a letter to the NFL on his behalf to try to get him reinstated.
Okay. All right. It's a really interesting story.
Yeah, we're wishing the best to Randy Gregory there. Among the many questions facing us today, and by us I mean every person, where will LeBron go? Probably near the top of that list. I think about it all the time. Technically signed through 2019, LeBron can opt out this summer if the playoffs don't go his way, or for any reason, really. Since returning to the Cavs in 2013, LeBron has signed short-term deals which allow him the flexibility to jump ship. Here is ex-Cavs GM David Griffin on how this formula breaks down.
When LeBron's on a one-year contract every year, you don't get to be long-term sustainable. You don't get to do Danny Ainge. You don't get to play that game. Those aren't the cards you're being dealt. You have to win right now and put him in a position, a frame of mind where he believes he's going to win in the future. And everything that happens because he's on one-year deals at the absolute maximum amount of money is an unsustainable formula. So to some degree, he puts himself in that situation as well. And I think he appreciates that, because it's what gives him the ability to make Cleveland do what they did. He doesn't care if Cleveland has nothing left if he walks. He cares if Cleveland believes in him enough to invest in him.
A lot of interesting points there, and I will ask you this. Does LeBron deserve blame for what's happening to him, or is he doing what he wants to do? Play basketball, make the money I deserve to play it, and I've earned, and then make my decision based on what I signed?
I have tremendous respect for David Griffin. I don't know David Griffin personally, but we've developed something of like an internet camaraderie, if you will. I think he did a great job in Cleveland. I think he's going to do a great job with his next GM job. And I think he's done a great job on television, podcast, the whole thing. I think he's a little mistaken here. LeBron has not always signed one-year deals. And when LeBron makes his decision this offseason, I would bet a lot of money he does not sign one-year deals. The reason he has signed one-year deals in Cleveland this time around is because he does not trust that owner. And he should not trust that owner. The proof is David Griffin not being there. What do I mean? LeBron signed a one-year deal his first year back in Cleveland and then put pressure on the organization to do what they needed to do. They win a championship. He, after the championship, signs a 2-year deal. And what does the owner do the first summer that LeBron does not have freedom of movement? Doesn't bring back David Griffin. Trades Kyrie Irving despite LeBron not wanting him to. Objects and complains about where they are luxury tax-wise. So LeBron has no reason to give any faith to Dan Gilbert, and LeBron owes Dan Gilbert nothing. LeBron has helped make Dan Gilbert over $1 billion when he ends up selling this team. So the idea that LeBron should be concerned about, can we have a 40-yard view of this thing as opposed to a 5-yard view of this thing? Of course he shouldn't. The one time LeBron has removed the leverage, the owner didn't bring back the GM and traded away the second-best player, both against LeBron's wishes. So, of course, LeBron's right for signing one-year deals in Cleveland. I don't think he didn't do that in Miami, and I don't think he'll do that at his next spot.
Yeah, with LeBron delivering one championship to Cleveland, anything he decided to do is not wrong. Or he already gave them what he promised he was going to give them, a championship. So what, they got a little bit less flexibility on the cap. But the things that Nick said, they're true. All these things happen. And to me, I don't know what Dan Gilbert was thinking, but to me, when LeBron went back home, to me, it wasn't home forever. It was home for now. And it is right. LeBron should try to win championships. He should never try to push it, position himself where it's about the future. LeBron's legacy is based on how many championship trophies can he hold. And he did what was in the best interest of his career in coming back to Cleveland, something he didn't have to do. Now, I'm just going to tell you, there's a lot of organizations that would love to have the problems Cleveland had the last 4 years.
Of course. Every organization except the Warriors would trade places with Cleveland over these last few years. And we really should look at what happened in the one offseason LeBron wasn't on a one-year deal. It's not only that David Griffin isn't brought back. It's not only that they trade Kyrie Irving against LeBron's wishes, but the trade that they make is one that looks towards the future instead of to right now. They take a lesser player in Isaiah Thomas compared to other offers they had because the Celtics attached a draft pick to it. If you can win a championship this year with LeBron James. We're seeing that right now. LeBron James at the peak of his powers. We think they have a very small chance of winning it because of the team around him. But if instead of getting Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and a draft pick, you had gotten a better return, you had gotten Paul George, they ended up saying they didn't want to trade for Paul George because Paul George wouldn't commit long term. Again, they only do that because LeBron couldn't hold their feet to the fire. Listen, guys, I'll leave. I'll leave right here and now.
But do you understand the second fold of it, what she's saying, which is when he does sign these one-term deals and he is making all that money, then there is no formula for sustainability. Then the next year that he leaves, you're sort of left with whatever the Cavs are going to be left with when LeBron leaves next year, which isn't much. Or are you saying it shouldn't matter and it shouldn't be LeBron's
I don't think certainly it's not LeBron's responsibility, but I don't think it should matter either.
And you're thinking teams would take that chance and have him for that
I also think that Danny, go ahead, C.
It's LeBron's responsibility to take care of his own business. He don't own the Cavs. He owns LeBron James, Inc. That's what he owns. And he delivered what any player wants to deliver to a franchise. And Nick mentioned it. Not only do you get the championship, but you get the cachet as far as LeBron James was with this organization, the overall evaluation of that organization. So there's no need to sit around and cry. To me, David Griffin, a little bit of this is about also trying to explain why he got fired.
Well, they didn't bring him back. Not why they just didn't renew his contract. But go ahead.
Call it what you want to.
Sure.
All right, when you got a contract and they end up hiring someone else in your job, call it what you want to. He's not working for the Cavs no more.
Right, and I think to me, it's very I feel like I know why David Griffin's not working for the Cavs anymore. Dan Gilbert, I'm going to go back to him, has never once retained a GM past his first contract, ever. He's never re-signed a GM. But he brings up Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge's done a great job. But Danny Ainge also can't do what Danny Ainge did. And by that, I mean this. You look at the teams that are built for long-term success. What built Boston for that was one of the greatest heists in league history with the Brooklyn Nets, that no one thought Brooklyn was going to be as bad as they were, as quick as they were. You had a Russian oligarch come in and buy the team, demand they compete for championships immediately. They mortgaged a decade of their future for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That's not duplicable or sustainable. You say, well, what about what Philly did? Okay, any organization can do what Philly did. Go through 5 years of hell. Not even trying to win, go do what Philly did. There aren't teams in the league that are simultaneously competing for rings and having a 10-year view of it. That doesn't exist. So I don't think this is a fair representation of the landscape. I also don't think it's a fair representation of what LeBron's been over the 15 years of his career. He signed 3 one-year deals in those 15 years total.
All right, we're going to take a break. You know why? Because coming up next, look who's here. Well-dressed, dapper, athletic, and after I saw on your Instagram account last night, Yogi, which I did not know, CJ McCollum is here.
What up, CJ?
Welcome back to First Things First. We welcome in Blazer star C.J. McCollum. C.J., have you enjoyed your time here this week? We certainly have.
I have. It's been a lot of fun.
We got smarter as a basketball community when you joined our set.
Absolutely right.
How about that?
Absolutely right.
I
Totally
appreciate
agree with
that.
All right, so the matchup we all anticipated out west, CJ, the one we all sort of knew we'd get, the one that'll make anyone that lives on the West Coast stay up way past our bedtime to watch. Warriors and Rockets Monday night. Golden State's head coach Steve Kerr is aware of the advantage of experience and hardware that his team has. Taking a listen to this.
I like where we are. Our guys have rings. That's a good position to be in. To me, the hardest championship is the first one, as an individual player and as a team, because you don't know. You don't quite know if you can do it. Once you get the first one, there's a little bit of house money, but you want it again because it's an unbelievable feeling. So I like our position. We're going to go in here knowing we're the defending champs, knowing we've got a couple championships here the last few years. Let's go get another one.
So, CJ, they are the defending champs, but are they clearly better than the Rockets?
I don't know if they're clearly better, but I think, like as he said before, with their experience, having played in multiple championships, having been there before, I think it allows them to execute a little bit better down the stretch. It allows them to be a little bit more comfortable in this setting because they've been there over and over and over again. And although it could have rubbed some people the wrong way, what he's saying is fact. It's factual. They have rings. They've been there before. They don't fear anyone because of the fact that they have 4 All-Stars, and they're all proven.
I know you realize you have a high basketball IQ. One thing I don't think you realize is, because you're early in this, trying out broadcasting, I don't think you realize the influence that you have of what you say.
Oh, here we go.
You visit our show. You and I didn't know each other, and I started hearing you talk about Golden State and just how tough they are to match up with. And, man, we've been banging Houston all season as they were going to be the best team in the NBA. But you've swayed me in a short period of time to get back to, wow, man, Golden State is hard to stop. Man, your opinion on basketball, it's affected me, and it's made me look at, is this Houston team, is it really that good? What am I missing?
Or even, hold on, are you doubting if Houston's that good, or do you think you had been underrating how good Golden State is?
That's a good question.
I think I know how good Golden State was. I appreciate Kevin Durant. I understand why he came to the team. But I'm still questioning, is this the team that's going to beat them? And I just believe that James Harden, is he going to be that MVP in the series? And those are things that I'm more concerned about after hearing him talk than I was before.
No, it's no disrespect to the Houston Rockets. They're a very, very good team. They execute well. They spread the floor. They've kind of revolutionized the game of basketball. But that doesn't change the fact that this is going to be a game where matchups are exploited, and both teams have the ability to switch all ball screens. But as I said before, in the playoffs, it comes down to being able to execute, being able to score easy baskets. I think the Rockets can score easy baskets. However, playing so much one-on-one is great. We did it. We've done it. There's a lot of teams that have played one-on-one and had success, but the easier baskets you can score, whether that be off catch and shoot opportunities, which Clay seems to get a lot of them, the Warriors are one of the few teams that have some of the best shooters to ever play the game and still lead the NBA in wide-open shots every season.
So what do you think about, and this will lead to something, but about staggering stars? I apologize for not knowing this. Do you and Dame, if it's a contested game, forget garbage time, are one of the two of you on the court the whole game?
Yeah, that's been the plan, the entire season. I mean, since I've been in the rotation 3 years ago, Coach has done it that way. I've been the backup point guard when he's out of the game, and then he comes back in, and I'm still the primary ball handler until he gets loose.
So you have 48 minutes a night, barring garbage time, where one of your 2 stars is out there. Houston also does that. They won't play a minute this whole series where both CP3 and Harden are on the bench, barring supreme foul trouble or injury. Golden State doesn't do that. Golden State will take KD and Steph and Draymond out of the game to start second quarters, to where Clay is the one guy out there. What do you think of not playing 48 minutes with either KD or Steph on the court? Because I think Kerr's great. I think this is a mistake he has made for the last 2 years, where he has not played 48 minutes of KD and Steph.
I think he'll make adjustments based on how the series goes, but a lot of times they do that to allow Clay to get going. He becomes the focal point of the offense. He's able to get more shots. They're kind of running through him. Although they share the ball as equal opportunity, they're more so looking for Clay. When he's in the first quarter, besides that last game where he was able to get 22 or 23 shots, KD can create a shot whenever he feels like it. They run a lot of offense through him in isolation situations. Steph can create a shot whenever he feels like it. So sometimes he may not get the touches to gain that rhythm. So that second quarter, he's able to get going.
You think a huge part of the game plan is going to be to attack Chris Paul and James Harden on the defensive side? You believe they are going to exploit. You believe that they think that they're not good defenders and they're going to take advantage of them in this series? Golden State.
More so James Harden. They're definitely going to attack him because he's so good offensively. You have to figure out ways to wear him out, and he doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to defense, although he's improved, and the numbers show that the Rockets have been pretty good with him on the floor. And I think it's not just him. You exploit mismatches in a series. You go back to the 16 championship with Kyrie Irving. What did he do? He tried to attack Steph as much as possible. What did LeBron do? Every time he had a chance to get Steph in a pick and roll, they did. So it'll be a game of chess. And CP will be trying to get Steph Curry in pick and rolls, and they'll be trying to exploit James in as many matchups as possible.
CJ, how important is game one for the Rockets to pick up that first win?
I think it sets the tone, not more so for themselves, mentally understanding that we beat them in the regular season, and there was rumors that the Warriors were coasting. And there comes a time where you get so good you become lackadaisical in the regular season because you know what you're capable of doing in the finals and in the Western Conference Finals. So I think it's more so for them to see, like, all right, we're as real as we thought we were.
Well, I think, listen, I picked the Rockets in 7. You, with all respect, have not swayed me off my pick. However, if they don't win game one, I'm going to feel terrible about it. Because I feel like there will be a level of mental letdown that you work all season for home court. You weren't coasting in the regular season. You had locked up the 1 seed, by the way, with a week left, and you were still playing your starters 35-plus minutes. They weren't taking guys out. They were going for it, right?
You've told us you're consumed with Golden State.
Right. Daryl Morey said it. We are obsessed with beating Golden State. And if you go through 5 months of work to get to this moment and you lose it in a 2-hour and 20-minute basketball game, I feel like that can be so deflating for them, right? Like, I mean, it's to a different degree to what you guys dealt with in the very close game 1 loss. You guys worked all year to get that 3 seed, and then all of a sudden home court's taken away from you in an evening. Like, It has to wear on you mentally.
It definitely wears on you mentally. You start to think, all right, we have to win this next game. And I think Draymond has the right approach. They've been here before, although this is the first time they played on the road in a little while to open up a series. He's thinking we just need to get one. If we get the first one, great. Then we go back to the Oracle, and we know what usually happens there. They've won 14 or 15 in a row at home. So I think the pressure will be on them in game one, and it's really just about how they execute because it's going to be a close game. Both teams are going to go on runs. Obviously, the Warriors like the third quarter as their time to go on the biggest run, and it's just about who can exploit what mismatches down the stretch.
CJ, as broadcasters, we use this word experience. We try to match up teams based on which one is more experienced. We did it in the East with the Sixers. We're doing it out here between the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. As a player, does that ever factor in with you? You ever go into a matchup and say, well, these guys have been there before and done that. They're probably going to know, what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they're going to know what to do in certain situations better than we do? Like, is that something the Rockets could be factoring in at all?
I don't necessarily think so because they got a lot of guys who've been in the league for a long time. Trevor Ariza has played on championship caliber teams. CP, although he hasn't been to the Western Conference Finals before, he's played on a lot of great teams. He's smart. He understands the game. Mm-hmm. He understands the magnitude of the game. I think sometimes when you have young teams, they don't understand the moment until it's past, like the 76ers. I think they were just hooping. They weren't really worried about the fact that they had a chance to potentially do some things that hadn't been done before. They just got out there playing. And in this case, you got MVP caliber players on both sides, and it's really just going to come down to execution and familiarity with each other and where people are going to be at.
You said MVP caliber players. I want to talk about the guy that's going to win MVP this year, James Harden. You can argue that he should have won the MVP 3 years ago. A lot of people thought he should have won the MVP last year. He's going to win it this year. His regular season over the last 4 years is unimpeachable. He's been as good as any player in the league in the regular season. I don't know if it's fair. I feel like this series is going to be something of a referendum on him. If he, tell me where you stand on that. If he doesn't play well in this series, I think people are going to throw out everything he's done in the regular season. Say, see, it's the herky-jerky, it's the trick in the refs. That doesn't work in the postseason. I don't know if that's fair or not, but I feel like that's what he's got on the line in this postseason.
I think you're always judged on your performance in the playoffs, and obviously people will remember how he played against the Spurs in that elimination game in which I don't think Kawhi Leonard was even playing.
No, he wasn't.
So that hurts him a little bit. But he's played so well in the regular season, and he's had flashes of brilliance in the playoffs to where I think he's gonna play well. It's just gonna be about the matchups and one team being better than the other, which in this case I think is the Warriors.
Yeah, I think James Harden is looking forward to the challenge. All great players, they want to be at a bigger stage, and they want to be able to face the thing that people said they couldn't do. It will be a referendum on him in the playoffs because that's the way you judge great players. It won't be just on the regular season. Be no different than Peyton Manning. Brilliant numbers during the regular season, not as good in the postseason, and that's the forget about being fair. If we're going to judge great players, you have to judge them in the most critical times, and nothing's more critical than the playoffs.
All right, CJ, stick around. We're going to come back. Tell us what the Celtics can do to slow down LeBron and the Cavs. That's next on First Things First. Back here with Blazers star CJ McCollum. If you weren't happy with the Eastern Conference Finals played out last year, don't worry about it. We're setting the table the exact same way this year. For the second straight season, the Cavs versus the Celtics. LeBron versus Al Horford? Cavs won last year with LeBron. Cavs winning this year with, well, just LeBron. Here's Kevin Love on how these teams got to this point yet again.
They have a lot of guys that can do a number of things, and guys that have really, really stepped up. And it's not just one player. It seems like, whether it's been a rookie, whether it's been, Rozier coming in and playing poker, Al Horford's playing out of his mind. It's been a lot of guys, and that's just three of the many. Jaylen Brown too. It's been a lot of guys that have played at a high level. So, in some ways it could be looked at as a surprise, but I just think both teams stepped up to their level of play, and both teams have done that.
All right, CJ, what do you think? How worried should the Cavaliers be about the Celtics in Game 1 in Boston?
I don't know if they should be worried, honestly. I think they're confident in their abilities, and they have the best player in this series and no one who can guard them on the other team. But I think it's tough to play against a team who has nothing to lose. The Boston Celtics have nothing to lose. They're a bunch of young guys who, as I said before, don't have a lot of experience. You heard Jason Tatum, this is my first year. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm just out here hooping, essentially, is what he said. But I think when you have Brad Stevens, who's going to put him in a position to succeed, and you have a bunch of guys who are playing at home. They're going to be comfortable. A lot of guys are making a lot of money for themselves in the free agency market. Smart, Rozier, my fellow Ohioan. So I think they're not afraid of the Cavs. So that's one thing to watch going forward.
When you mention not afraid of the Cavs and Brad Stevens' edge to it, I do think one edge that the Celtics have, and I think Ty Lue's a good coach. I think Ty Lue gets a bad rep, but I think they have the coaching edge in Boston. And I think what Brad Stevens is going to be able to do with the time between the series is look at the things Indiana did against the players not named LeBron and see if they can duplicate that. Because the reason Indiana went 7 and Toronto went 4 was not about LeBron. LeBron averaged almost identical stat lines, points, rebounds, assists, shooting percentage in both series. The difference was his supporting cast was outstanding in round 2 and was almost non-existent in round 1. Is that something what Indiana did to those guys duplicable in your opinion, or was that just guys missing shots they typically make?
I think it was a combination of both things. Supporting cast, they had similar looks in both games. JR hit tougher shots. You could argue he hit tougher shots in the series, in the previous series. Whereas in the first series, Kevin Love was missing layups. His rhythm was a little off. He wasn't as comfortable.
No inside presence.
No, not a real presence. And then they started force feeding him. He got comfortable. He started hitting tough shots. He started being the aggressor on the offensive end. I think, as you said before, the Cavs will go as far as the role players go. However, LeBron's good enough to get past this Celtics team without Kyrie. Now, if they had Kyrie, they would be worried.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about the series that I'm not going to talk about too much, but Kyrie Irving, if he was on the court. LeBron doesn't have that to worry about. I don't think they have the bodies, and I don't think you can duplicate what happened in the Pacers series. They had wide open looks. Guys couldn't make no buckets. They couldn't make no shots. Now, they did come up with some different sets in the second series against Toronto that was very, very effective, but LeBron, you can't double team him. I think this all boils down to this. How well do the Celtics shoot the ball and shoot it behind the three-point line? They shoot it well at home, but on the road, they haven't shot the ball as well. Do you see this as being one of the difference between the Celtics being able to make this a series or trying to pull the upset?
Definitely. Shot making is going to be crucial. I think figuring out ways to exploit certain mismatches. And you don't necessarily know who LeBron's going to guard in this series. A lot of times he spent time on guys who don't really impact the game offensively to allow him to rest. Look at this Boston Celtics starting five. Jason Tatum's an aggressor. He's going to attack. He's going to try to score. Jaylen Brown's an aggressor. He's going to attack and try to score. And, Al Horford's going to do a little bit of everything. And then you have Rozier, who's able to get off as well. So you kind of question who's Kyle Korver going to guard, who they're going to put JR on, some of those situations, because I think the Celtics are good enough, regardless of how they shoot, to win 2 games in this series.
Yeah, I think they're going to isolate Kyle Korver and some of those other defenders exactly the same way they did J.J. Redick, the same way they did Barinelli in the Philadelphia series. They isolated, moved the ball till they got the matchup, then they posted them up. Do you think that will work against the Cavaliers?
I think they have to be very cautious of who they attack, because LeBron's going to be a roamer. He's going to try to roam. He's going to be trying to help, figuring out ways to get into the passing lanes and contest shots on the weak side. But I think they're good enough with Al Horford. He initiated the offense some against us when we played them without Kyrie. He's able to move positions and do some different things to where he'll impact the game. And I think that Jason Tatum's been so consistent, 7+ games of 20+ points. Jaylen Brown's going to attack. I think this is going to be a more interesting series than people think.
Look, what's the most interesting question? What's the one question everyone has to answer if the Cavs have a shot here is, how do you stop LeBron?
If the Celtics have
If the Celtics, right. How do you stop LeBron? So what both of you are saying is there's no real way to stop LeBron. You're going to have to throw a mishmash of things. But, Nick, you think that the Celtics have weapons on this team to stop him?
Not to stop him. I think the Celtics are much better equipped personnel-wise than Toronto. I think that they can throw various bodies at him. I think Marcus Morris is a body he's going to have to deal with, similar to Thaddeus Young in the Indiana series. If I want to keep using comparisons, I think Marcus Smart is a rich man's Lance Stevenson. I think he can do a lot of the same things Lance does, but just at a higher level.
Height and weight, though. Height and weight against LeBron. Marcus Smart cannot guard.
He's not as tall, but I think Marcus Smart probably weighs the same as Lance. Marcus Smart is a big body. Like, he's not as tall. Go ahead, CJ.
I get what you're saying. Marcus Smart's a very good defender. He's versatile, but he's closer to my height. Lance Stevenson is closer to LeBron, closer to Ben Simmons' height. He's in that 6'6" to 6'9" range, to where it's different. It's like when Kevin Durant's being guarded by a 6'6" guy versus when Kevin Durant's being guarded by a 6'3" guy. It's completely different.
The other point you make about LeBron, who he's going to guard, in the regular season, they put LeBron on Jaylen Brown more than they put him on almost every other player combined, and he totally erased Jaylen Brown offensively. Jaylen Brown in their matchups was shooting 20% on 89 possessions. On 89 possessions guarded by LeBron, he only made 5 baskets. I don't think that's what they want to do. I think you're right. They want to put LeBron on the other team's worst offensive player so he can kind of play rover to a degree. But what the Celtics have going for him, is they've got, I keep bringing this up, they got no lame ducks out there. They got nobody out there that he can't drive. Everyone out there is a true triple threat. That's one of the things they took advantage against Philly. Philly has some great shooters, but that's all they could do. Boston's got guys that can do everything, which is why they're hard to defend against.
Yeah, they typically can do everything, but you watch Tatum and Brown, especially when they play against LeBron. Watch how their lack of ability to get past LeBron. LeBron plays up on them on the three-point line, and they can't, especially in the playoffs, because they allow LeBron, he's going to be able to contact them. They're not going to be able to get past them, which you see that now, where they are that triple threat when they get the ball. When they go against LeBron, I don't see them as being as effective as they have been in other series.
I see Jason Tatum impacting this series the same way he has in the past, because he can score at 3 levels. I think that when you can score at 3 levels, it translates regardless of who's guarding you. He can knock down the 3 at a high clip. He can create space for the mid-range, and he can finish around the basket. So I don't think it's going to matter if Bron's guarding him or if I don't know who else is out there that can potentially guard him. I think they're all going to play their games, but I think Jason Tatum's game translates to any series, any situation, because he's so smooth. I think Jaylen Brown's more 3 and layup. Right? So he's either shooting a 3 or he's trying to get to the cup. He doesn't pull up as much. He doesn't have that in-between game, or at least he doesn't show it. He may have it. He doesn't show it as much. So I think that's the difference in those two guys.
I'm going to ask you a question that leads me to something. Is there a guy in the league that is not necessarily regarded as a great defender or a great player that for some reason or another gives you trouble? A guy that particularly for some reason just is, you see him on the stairs like, damn, this guy. Is there a guy like that?
I don't feel like anybody gives me trouble.
I knew he was going to say that.
Personally, I think there's some really good defenders in the NBA, but my mentality is to attack and be aggressive. When I miss shots, I think it's because I missed. I don't think it's because somebody played good.
The reason I ask that, and I respect the answer, is Al Horford just gave it to Joel Embiid. But for some reason or another, Tristan Thompson gives Al Horford tremendous trouble. You look at every regular season, postseason, whether it was when Horford was with the Hawks or now that he's here with Boston, Tristan Thompson has been problematic for Al Horford throughout it. You wouldn't think so. Embiid's obviously a better defender than Al Horford. He's a better player than, Embiid's obviously a better defender than Tristan. But that's just one of those odd matchups where the Celtics need Horford to be awesome. And he has struggled tremendously against Tristan Thompson for some reason or another. Now, I don't think Tristan will start. Kevin Love will start at center. But when he comes in, that's a matchup to watch for in my eyes.
Yeah, I think it's something you should definitely watch for, but the only problem with that is that he's not starting the game. So by the time he comes in this series, Al Horford may already be in the rhythm. And as we've seen in this league, once a guy gets in a rhythm, it doesn't matter who you put on him. But I think Tristan Thompson's length, his energy, obviously he impacted the last couple of series with the way he rebounds, sets screens, and can finish around the basket with both hands. So I think he'll definitely impact the series, but it may be too late when he comes into the game.
A few seconds left. Who's going to win the series?
I think the Cavs win in 6.
Wrong. The answer is the Celtics. But that's okay. CJ, did you have fun?
You were great this week.
I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being here this week. We're going to take a break. Back with more
don't never go on TV talking about some guy can stop you, man.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long.